just say before we begin, people often come to me afterwards and say, oh, this is so amazing, you've done such an amazing job. You've got to know that none of this is actually about me. This is a team that has taken the vision, coloured it in. I'm very good at outlines. I'm not very good at colouring in on any level. And so all of this is the team that just worked tirelessly with ideas. And I wonder if at the beginning, instead of at the end, we can appreciate them. That would be awesome, because I think it looks amazing. And the idea too, we've got mums and daughters here, we've got girls who've come with their friends. The idea for having all these little places where you can take fun photos. You need to explain to me what that one is, because I don't really understand. Oh, that's the cake table. Okay, there you go. That's what that is. That's the cake table. I was like, I don't understand what... Anyway, it's all right. Clearly I've been here with all the details. But this is something that's actually very close to my heart. And even, Sarah shared a moment ago about what we're hoping to do through the merch table. I read this week that I think 30, might be more because this was the beginning of the week, 30 women have lost their lives this year alone to domestic violence. And so, as much as our theme is Don't Say Someday, I think Don't Say Someday is never just about us. And people talk a lot about how terrible it is, how people need to do something about it. Well, I think don't say someday. We can actually, it might be a small thing, but it's a small thing and it's something. Anyway, don't say someday. I'm so excited. I'm just going to start my timer because I'm prone to over-talking. As you probably noticed, welcome to our new, reimagined Sisterhood for this year. This theme, honestly, I think it's kind of a theme of my life, don't say someday. And I think I looked up, there's an old movie starring Tom Cruise and Cameron Diaz called Night and Day. I think it was like 2010, 2001. Anyway, it was a long time ago. And there's a scene in that movie that has always sort of stuck with me, and it's on a plane, and Cameron Diaz is there, and she makes a comment about someday, and Tom Cruise replies, someday, that's a dangerous word. It's really just code for never. And then they share their someday list. It's all, it's a good movie. If you've not watched it, good movie. And they share their someday lists, what they would like to do. His is very romantic, and she's, whatever. Anyway, it is Tom Cruise. And then at the end of the movie, predictably after they've been blown up and shot and, thrown out of planes and all sorts of things, and they're unscathed, Tom Cruise has been the hero, generally what he does. And he wakes up, she's kidnapped him from a hospital. And I'm not suggesting you kidnap people from a hospital. He wakes up and he says, what day is it? And she says, it's someday. And it's that thought that, don't say someday. Like, make your somedays a reality. And I just I love that. It's something about that interaction just stuck with me all those years ago. And I thought about, how many things in my life are on a someday list? Oh, someday, one day. And what am I actually putting off that I could be leaning into right now? And there's a verse in Scripture that has always resonated with me about what life is meant to look like. And it's this. It's in John 10:10. It says, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but I, Jesus, have come to give you everything in abundance, more than you expect, life in its fullness until you overflow. Let me just read that segment again. Everything in abundance, more than you expect, life in its fullness until you overflow. And that challenges me. It challenges me about the life that I'm living. Firstly, it shows me that there are things in your life that can deplete and rob you. They just are. We all know what that's like. And they rob me from the life that I'm designed to live. And I need to be aware of that. But secondly, and I think more importantly, am I living the kind of life that is, that is to its fullness, in abundance, till I overflow? Am I living that kind of life, or am I just kind of existing day to day? And it can be a challenge, because life is busy and life is full and life has lots of challenges. There would not be a woman in this room that has not been through a challenge. And if you have, please come see me afterwards. Tell me how you're doing it. But am I living that kind of life? Am I living a life like that? Or am I kind of stuck in someday? And if it's someday, well, then what is my plan to get from where I am now to living that life? And I'm not saying it's not good to have vision. It's great to have vision for your life, for things you want to achieve. It's not really what I'm talking about. It's those things that we may feel are a little bit kind of whimsical. I love that word. Kind of whimsical someday stuff. Things that you would love to do. I'd love, someone says, I'm doing this. I'd love to do that. And then you kind of, nothing. I'd love to do that. Or somehow you should do that, but it just seems a little bit like a dream. My parents were both children of the Great Depression. And so they determined when they got married to work really hard so they could have a comfortable life without any financial pressure. And they were successful. And when I was in school, they had 5 jobs between them. 5. Didn't see much of them, but they had 5 jobs between them. And by the time my father retired, they were more than comfortable financially. And my mother talked about getting a new lounge for 30 years. 30 years my mother talked about buying a new lounge. And I cannot tell you how many times in that 30 years we went to the shop, we sat on every lounge, we talked about this was good, this was not good, what kind of lounge we would want. Yes, I'll get that one. We went home and we never got it. And I can tell you that because I vividly remember being about 8 months pregnant with Levi and getting a speeding ticket because I was speeding to get my mother to go and look at lounges. That is not an excuse, it's just how I remember. And so it's not that they didn't have the funds. They had more than enough to buy themselves a lounge. They just couldn't move from someday to now. To today. And so instead they put cushions under the sagging springs just in case, just to kind of prop up the corner that was down. And you had to be careful how you sat on it because, another spring might let go while you were sitting there. So structurally it was done. It looked pretty good other than that, but structurally it was done. And it was a really small thing. But it made me really sad to think at the end of my parents' life that a simple purchase on their someday list could have given them more comfort and a little bit of enjoyment and probably a better back from sitting like this. But if they could have just decided to move it from the someday list to the I'm going to make a decision to do that. And I think we often say someday because it allows us to postpone taking action. Because we're tired and we're busy and our lives are full and there's so many more TikTok things to watch and recipes to write down and things to take up our lives. And we postpone taking action on our goals and aspirations. And I'm not talking about everybody, I'm not talking about anything, but there would not be a woman in this room that doesn't have a someday. Someday. And it can stem from fear. Well, what if I do it and it doesn't work? Well, I think if you get to my age, you've done plenty of things and they didn't work, but I'm determined to go, well, at least I had a go. Lack of confidence in our ability to achieve it or lack of confidence in the ability to get what you actually desire, the outcome that you want. And so I think saying someday can be a way to cope with the kind of overwhelming nature of our ambitions because, again, there's not a woman in this room that doesn't have, you lie there and you think, I could do this. Honestly, if fitness was about thinking about it, I would be the fittest person in this room. So someday, I honestly, and please don't judge me about this, I can lie in bed, I can run around that block, I don't know how many times I can run up hills, I can do everything. I'm doing gymnastics, but I'm only somedaying it. I'm not actually taking action on it. And sometimes it's the little things that we put on the someday list. The small personal comfort things like my parents and the lounge. And for goodness sake, if you're in this room and you've been putting off buying a lounge and you have the funds to do it, please go do it. Learn from my parents. Sometimes it's the small personal comfort things like the lounge. Things like someday I'd like to parachute from a plane. Or someday I'd like to go to Italy. Or someday I'd like to enroll in a Pilates class. Well, good news, girls, you can try it out today. But other times it's the things that could actually enhance or change our lives. in a way that would bring a sense of fulfillment and let us experience that life in abundance till it overflows, that kind of life that scripture talks about. And I think that's the kind of life we are actually created to live. And that looks different for each of us. I mean, I look at Cammie. Cammie's here today. She's got a store. You need to go and have a look at her market stall. This is the first time she's done it, right? It's her someday. Yeah. I have heard Cammie talk about launching this kind of thing for, I don't know, probably as long as I've known her. And her someday is today. And I love that. And she's terrified that none of you will look at it and it will be a disaster. But because I've just highlighted it, it will not. We will all go look at it and tell her how amazing she is. Because she's actually leaning into her Sunday. It could be a career change. It could be starting your own business. It could be studying, which is something I'm trying to lean into this year. Still not quite there, but leaning. Could be volunteering to help an organisation or in an area where you really feel like you could make a difference. It could be pursuing a gift and talent that you've had that you've shelved because of, life and circumstances and stage of life. It could be that, but wow, I'd really like that. It could be travelling to expand your worldview. It could be buying your own home. Could be expanding your property portfolio. And what I love about the panel that we've actually got in the breakout session is we're going to actually talk to a few girls of different ages and demographics who haven't let their age, their stage of life limit them, and they've leaned into the opportunities that have been put before them and have some experience and wisdom and I hope inspiration to share for you. I think the danger of saying someday is this. It can lead to just, who's a good procrastinator? I am the world's best procrastinator. I have been writing this message since we set the date for this, and I did it yesterday. I am the world's largest. I knew what I wanted to say, I just didn't write it down, okay? Procrastination and inaction, I can honestly, if I've got to write a message, that is when I notice that the windows need cleaning. Or, wow, that's really dusty. I mean, I never notice that on a normal day. It's just stuff. But, or it would be a good day to turn the mattress or, climb up and clean that light fitting because it's just me. And it's easy to push important goals and aspirations into an indefinite future. It really is. You just push them out there. Push them out. But it results in, I think, missed opportunities and unfulfilled potential. And I don't want to live that kind of life. I don't want to get to 85, 90, how many years I have and think, man, I wish I'd done that. Man, I wish I'd jumped out of a plane. I should have done it earlier because I've seen footage of women jumping out of planes at my age. Their loose skin is not kind. It's like, should have done it when my skin was much tighter. And I almost did it. But our children were small and I just had this fear that I would be the person that jumped out of the plane and broke my legs while my kids stood on the beach and washed me. Thought it would be too traumatic. Now they'll be fine. So I can still do that. And I think by replacing someday with specific plans and actions, you're more likely to make progress, feel better about it, and achieve your goals. It's a no regrets approach. Seize the day. Nike says it well. Just do it. Just do it. And I think it's not just about us. That's the thing that I think that we miss when we put our someday list back there. It's not just about us. It actually empowers the generations that follow. Influences is a word that I really don't like the fact that influences has become such a yucky word. And when we think of influencers, we think of, just people that aren't really influential. It's been overused and I think poorly used. But let's not lose the concept of it. We are living right now in the freedom and empowerment that the generation before us fought really hard for. Now it's up to us to not be the someday people. Women like you and like me fought for the right to vote in the early 1900s, and now it's a given, but back then it was not. Women actually fought for the right to work. I saw a TikTok the other day that I really didn't like. It was like, to the women who voted for the right to work, wish you hadn't. I'm like, no, you don't. You actually don't. They've fought for a voice in our nation, and we take it for granted now because we have it. But there are things that our generation and the generations under me, which is quite a few now, we actually need to seize the someday so that the generations that come after that will actually live in the kind of world that we have created for them. Imagine if those women in the last generation were still saying someday. Someday, someone should, someday. And I don't know about you, but I've got this conviction that life is to be lived. I cannot get my mind around just existing. I can't get my mind about it. And if you've been on the Sisterhood journey for any length of time, you would have heard me say this endlessly. But I just am convinced that we need to live not only the length of our days, but the breadth and the depth and the height. If what Scripture tells us is that we were supposed to have this life in abundance to the full till it overflows, that kind of life, then that's the life we should be leaning into. And there's always a reason not to. There's always a circumstance or a situation or a fear or an insecurity that goes, oh no, but what if I fail? Well, I want to flip that today. But what if you don't? And even if you do, what if you learn something and grow? Like, I don't know that I've ever made a mistake in my life that I haven't tried to grow from, because I'm determined to not let it be just a mistake. Well, that was a mistake. Well, no, it was, but what will I do differently next time? What will set me up better for next time? Life is not to be endured. We're here to live, not just exist. And I think that's at any age. And to do that, I need to be aware of managing my someday list. So how do you manage your someday list? How do you realise, how does someday go from being someday to I'm leaning into it? I'm glad you asked. Got 3 things, because it's so good. So I think you've got to set specific goals. I am not good at goals, but I think you have to. You have to set specific goals. Break down your long-term aspirations into smaller, achievable, actionable goals with deadlines. I'm also not good at, actually, deadlines are really good for me the day before generally. For example, if you're dreaming of traveling the world, Chris and I had always talked about going to Italy. And we'd be still talking about going to Italy if we hadn't actually planned, booked the tickets, and this will give some of you anxiety, and had a place to stay for the first 2 nights we were there. So that was all we planned. I like spontaneity. I know it gives some people anxiety, but I actually like it. It gives me anxiety to have to work to a program. So if you're dreaming of traveling the world, you've got to set a goal to do that. Save, that's part of it, a certain amount of money each month for your first trip, and commit to booking the tickets by a specific date. Because if you don't book the tickets, you're not getting on the plane, right? Do some research. Even start by looking at the possibility of that. You will never lean into a someday of doing, say, travelling around the world if you don't look at your budget, look at how you could potentially save $20 a week, look at how much you can save and how you could do it. You're never going to lean into that until you actually start researching it and looking. It's the same with study. I decided a number of years ago that I wanted to study this particular thing, and I enrolled in it, and then I decided that is actually not what I want to study. Is that a mistake? No. It's a clarity to what I want to do, because then I looked further and thought, this is actually more what I want to do, but I wouldn't have known had I not set a goal and started to look at it. The second thing, and we're pretty good at this, girls, tell somebody. We're pretty good at talking. Tell somebody. I have lived by the belief that everybody needs a cheer squad. Everybody, even if it's one person, one voice, a cheer squad, someone who's going, yep, you can do it. You can do it, you can do this. And I think most of us need friendly accountability. We're saving for a trip, and now we're at Zara buying $300 worth of and I'm going to put the other $300 towards my trip. Yeah, so you need a friendly accountability. And once you've said it out loud, it kind of becomes more real, doesn't it? Becomes more real. While it's in your head, nobody knows about it. But when you say it out loud, it becomes more real. And ask your friends to keep you accountable or encourage you when it seems to get overwhelming. I'd love to do this, but I just fear that it's not going to work. What if I'm not? My big thing was I want to study. Haven't been in school since I finished year 12 in 1980. That is a little while ago. Some of you, most of you weren't born then. So what if I'm not smart enough? What if I fail? And people would say, don't be ridiculous, you're really smart. And I'm like, I am really smart, I'm going to do it. It remains to be seen. But at least I've got people saying to me, instead of my head, when we get in our head and we get this, I'd love to do it, no I can't, love to do it, no I can't, what if, and it just bounces around like a ping pong ball in a drain pipe, going absolutely nowhere. But if we're brave enough to say it out loud, even if you just go, someday I'd really like to maybe do this. Someday I'd like to work in this field. Someday I'd like to be a part of doing something like this. Someday I'd like to express the gift that I have musically in a fashion that, my husband has just started doing this actually, where he's like, well, I'm just going to go busk. I'm not busk, going to go do open mics, and it doesn't matter if people don't like me, I'm just going to do it because I like it, and I'm not going to say someday anymore. I'm also a big believer in the power of the spoken word. I think when you speak it out, when I look at creation and I look at God and he spoke things into existence, I think we're foolish if we don't think there's some power in that. I would really like to do this. I would really like to lean into this. And then it becomes more of a reality. The third thing I think we have to do, which I think is the hardest, is we have to actually take action. Got to take action. But we don't have to do the whole thing. There's this saying that my kids think is really, well, they did when they were younger, I thought it was really funny, like, how do you eat an elephant? You're one bite at a time. Seriously. How do you eat a super large pizza? Well, one bite at a time. You get to who's ever done that? You look and you think, gee, I didn't think I was hungry. I didn't think I could eat all that. But there you go, it's gone. One bite at a time. So identify one small step you can take today towards your goal. What is that? Is it doing some research? Is it talking to someone who has done that? Is it just, I don't know, something? Is it making a phone call? Is it drafting a plan? Is it writing it in your journal? But I think taking action now helps build momentum. And I think in that you've got to be determined to not be, what is the word I'm looking for? Depressed? No, you've got to be not discouraged is what I'm looking for, when you don't do it as quickly as you think you should. I can remember before Sisterhood was Sisterhood, we used to call it New Hope Women, which is terrible and we won't ever talk about that again. But I can remember getting up, I was turning 50? No, I was turning 40. That was a long time ago. I was turning 40 and I remember saying to the girls in the room, Belinda will probably remember this because she was here, I'm going to be fit for 40. Fit for 40s. And that was good because it's still fitted with 50s. So fit for 50s. Still haven't quite achieved it. But I'm trying to think of a word that goes for 60s because that's now where I am. But you've got to determine to not be discouraged and keep leaning. And now you need to keep me accountable because I've said it out loud. That was such a dumb thing to do. But you've got to take action. You've got to build momentum, and it prevents the trap of delaying important tasks to someday. So if I take action, particularly if you put finance into it, that always motivates me. I've put money into this, I need to. Sarah's very motivated about this too. Put money into it, so I need to do it. Okay, I would say this, finishing up. Life is long, right? But life is also very short. And I think we don't know, and I'm not trying to be in any way morbid here, how many days we have on the planet. We don't. I don't want to go to bed at night and find out it's my last day on the planet and have a someday list that is longer than what I have achieved list. So every day I want to lean into what I can do that I would like to do. Now, will I achieve them all? Maybe not, but I'm going to have a good go. I'm going to have a red hot go at it. So what's your someday? What's on your list? What are the things that you lie in bed at night and think, someday, or you see it, or see someone else doing it, and you think, someday I'm going to do that. What is it? Work out what it is. Then take some steps towards it. Share it with someone. You're going to have a whole, almost an hour. What time are we at? Yes, almost an hour. You're going to have almost an hour to sit around, and we did this quite intentionally because I think we can rush through life. We could have done session, morning tea, 20 minutes gone. But it is my personal conviction that we were put on the planet to do life together. And we don't take enough time to actually sit and talk and have a decent conversation past, how are you going, how are the kids? Yeah, life's busy. What'd you do last week? Can't remember. How was your week? Can't remember, must have been okay. Because we live a very fast life. So we've intentionally put time into this. This is actually a session, the middle section. It's called community. And, for the people out there that are a little bit introverted, go look at the markets. Right? Just go look at the markets, find a place to sit and have a conversation with someone about someday. And let people encourage you, let people breathe life into you, let people grab you under your elbows and help you move towards it. Let's not just dream about the future. Let's get busy living it.